Number 13. Janice Bonnell. 40-year-old Brett Bonnell was found dead next to his vehicle in Seadrift, Texas one night in 2008. By all appearances, it seemed like the tragic result of a hit and run. Brett suffered from obvious blunt force trauma to his head, which often happens in a car crash. But investigators found no evidence of a collision with another vehicle, and the positioning of Brett's body and belongings were inconsistent with the features of the usual car crash scene. Investigators started to suspect foul play, and their suspicions were raised further when they discovered that a series of tragedies had befallen the victim in recent years. Their focus soon turned to Brett's wife, Janice. The couple met in the early 2000s while working at a Walmart in Indiana. After marrying, they went into business together, but they failed to turn it into a profitable enterprise. Around the same time, bad things started happening to Brett. In 2005, before the couple moved to Texas, their house burnt to the ground. A week later, the mobile home they were living in was also set on fire, and not long after that, Brett became seriously sick with what his friends suspected was deliberate food poisoning. Police received several tips from people claiming that Janice's sister, Betty, was somehow involved in the man's death. After discovering some warrants out for Betty's arrest in connection to unrelated cases, officers took her into custody and threw her in jail, where she languished for a week before deciding to reveal what she knew. Betty said that Janice called her in the middle of the night, asking her to come over. When she got there, Brett was already dead. His lover had beaten him in the head with a baseball bat and needed to get rid of the evidence. The sisters decided to stage a hit and run, hoping law enforcement would be none the wiser about what actually happened. During questioning, Janice admitted to killing her husband. She claimed Brett was bipolar, unmedicated, and very abusive. His daughter from a previous marriage who lived with the couple told a different story. She saw Brett as a father figure and had only good things to say about the man. A closer look at the couple's finances revealed that Janice had squandered Brett's 401k and inheritance. She was also quick to ask about his life insurance policy after his death, leading investigators to believe she was responsible for the mysterious fires that destroyed her and Brett's previous homes. Janice failed to collect insurance money in those cases and allegedly killed her husband as a backup plan. She's currently serving a 45-year sentence for murder with eligibility for parole after 22.5 years behind bars. Betty was also charged for her role in the crime and served 18 months for tampering with evidence. Number 12. Lucy Ashton. In 2020, during a morning bike ride in the English village of Sefton, Jenny Dowd was fatally run down by a Ford Focus. The 31-year-old, who proudly worked for the country's National Health Service, was then rushed to the hospital. In the meantime, police were able to track down and arrest 24-year-old Lucy Ashton, who was accused of hitting the victim and leaving her for dead after driving away. Dowd spent 9 days clinging to life before finally succumbing to her injuries. Ashton pleaded guilty to death by careless driving and failing to stop after a collision. She was ordered to serve a year in jail, and she lost her driver's license for an additional year. In a statement made to the public, law enforcement spokesman Stuart McIver described Dowd's death as a preventable tragedy. He warned motorists to pay attention on the road and be mindful of everyone they share it with. Number 11. Christina Marie Carroll. 57-year-old Kevin Allen Doherty was moving along the road in his motorized wheelchair in Florence, Alabama one evening in 2017 when he was suddenly struck by an SUV. By the time first responders got there, though, the driver was already long gone. Doherty was flown to the hospital, but unfortunately it was too late to save him. Acting on tips from the public, authorities identified the suspect as 26-year-old Christina Marie Carroll. She turned herself in a few days after the incident and was charged with one felony count of fleeing the scene of an accident resulting in death. The case initially made headlines across the country, with several news outlets reporting that Carroll was a self-proclaimed model on her social media profiles. Unfortunately, the outcome of this story is unclear. According to Alabama state prison records, she's not currently behind bars. Number 10. Sierra Childress. It's apparently not all that unusual for accidents to happen at one particular busy intersection in Henrico County, Virginia, at the crossroad of Monument Avenue and Horseman Road. But police were called to a particularly tragic scene one morning back in April 2022 when they arrived and found 61-year-old Thomas Sotos head first in a ditch, clinging to life after a hit and run. The victim was quickly rushed to the hospital, where he later died from his injuries. Soto's mother told the local news that her son went outside to bring their trash can back and never returned. He was in his own yard when he got hit. Investigators believe that the driver responsible may have been trying to navigate around backed-up traffic by going onto people's driveways to cut past the cars. Police appealed to the public for information about the suspect and soon had a suspect in their sights. 24-year-old Sierra Childress was then charged with not reporting an accident, drug possession, and her second DWI in 5 years. According to prosecutors, Childress sped away in her Toyota Prius in order to buy heroin and get her car fixed up. Officers found her overdosing at a car repair shop on drugs she took inside the business's bathroom. By then, she had already allegedly admitted to several people that she ran over a man with her car. Childress pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor DWI, 1 count of felony failure to stop at the scene of an accident with injury, and felony involuntary manslaughter. Her next court appearance is scheduled for April 2023, where she'll receive her sentence. Number 9. Jessie Hodge. Dwight Woods was simply passing through Lenoir City, Tennessee early one morning on his motorcycle while on his way to St. Louis when a BMW rammed into his bike. The offending vehicle then continued to drive for another 300 yards, 274.3 meters, with the motorcycle stuck to it before finally coming to a complete stop. Instead of sticking around and waiting for the police to get there, the BMW fled the scene and the driver didn't call 911. This inaction resulted in Wood's tragic death. Shortly after the accident, police tracked down the hit-and-run driver, 31-year-old Jessie Hodge, and took her back to the scene. The crash happened in 2021, but remains unsolved as of 2023. In late 2022, a Knox County grand jury indicted Hodge on charges of vehicular homicide, leaving the scene of an accident and following too closely. She pleaded not guilty, but it's unclear what happened afterwards. Number 8. Nathan Severtson. All hell broke loose in a Target parking lot in St. Cloud, Minnesota in early 2023 when some shoppers observed what looked like a deliberate hit-and-run crash. 911 callers and other witnesses saw a Volkswagen Passat barreling into the parking lot at high speeds and ramming into at least 2 vehicles before hitting a pedestrian. The suspect was still at the scene when police arrived, but he tried to run away. Luckily, an officer was able to catch up with him less than a block away from the store. Identified by authorities as 18-year-old Nathan Severtson, police say that he allegedly seemed impaired and admitted he had been drinking heavily. His blood alcohol content was well above the legal limit for driving. Due to his age, he could have been charged for having any alcohol in his system at all under Minnesota's Not a Drop law, which takes a zero-tolerance stance on underage drinking and driving. The victim, a 29-year-old male, sustained an injury to his leg and had blood pouring out of his mouth when officers got to the scene. He said that he heard a noise coming towards his direction while walking through the parking lot and turned around to see the car barreling straight at him. Surveillance footage showed a man trying to jump out of the way before he got hit. In the video, the Volkswagen could also be seen striking the same SUV twice. According to bystanders, it seemed as if Severtson threw his car into reverse after the initial collision and took a second go at the car. Severtson was charged with second-degree assault, criminal vehicular operation, drunk driving, and fleeing police. Number 7. Linaura Wilson. In early 2023, a fight between 2 lifelong friends in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, lasted all night long and even into the morning, ending only after one of them was discovered with life-threatening injuries. According to sources who knew both the parties involved, 22-year-old Linaura Wilson and 20-year-old Antonisha Gore met when they were toddlers and had been close friends ever since. Gore's mother, Tina, told news outlet Local 10 that the women were arguing over who they believed had smashed out the window of an SUV, one of them owned. The fight escalated from that point. A video taken from a cell phone of the incident showed a Honda Accord matching the description of Wilson's car speeding by with gore clinging onto the hood. She fell off and was briefly dragged around by the vehicle before it sped off and circled back around. The Honda ran over the victim and then fled. Gore was rushed to the hospital with several critical injuries. According to a probable cause affidavit obtained by the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, a neighbor reported hearing a loud thud and seeing the Honda drive off, leaving the seriously wounded victim in a puddle of blood on the street. The witness also claimed to overhear a woman yelling, "Someone come get this girl before I kill her." Deputies tracked Wilson down at her home, just a block away from the scene, and arrested her on suspicion of first-degree attempted murder. Number 6. John Carr. In a disturbing act of violence outside of a Dallas Cowboys bar in Great Falls, Montana in early 2023, an angry customer was accused of ramming his pickup truck into a fellow patron, pinning her against the building. Officers arrived and found the victim lying in the parking lot with bodily fluids pouring out of her mouth. By then, the suspect had already fled the scene. The woman was rushed to the hospital with serious injuries, but luckily pulled through. In the meantime, witnesses told police that the suspect yelled derogatory and transphobic statements at her. One bystander said she was standing right next to the woman and would also have been hit by the suspect's truck if she hadn't gotten out of the way. Officers eventually identified the alleged culprit as 57-year-old John Carr and paid him a visit the next day. When they arrived at his property, they noticed visible damage to his truck. Carr told them that he was asked to leave the bar because he smacked a girl's butt. As he left the building, he reportedly asked a woman if she was one of those transgender people. Authorities charged Carr with criminal endangerment and failure to remain at the scene of an accident resulting in serious bodily injury. His bail was set at $75,000, and the state has since requested that the court require his participation in a 24/7 alcohol monitoring program while the case continues. Number 5. Shadeja Ellison. In early 2018, a woman later identified as 19-year-old Shadeja Ellison was seen ramming her vehicle right into 19-year-old Tamika Cooper in Wilmington, North Carolina. The victim luckily only received a minor leg injury. Ellison posted 2 videos on Facebook, including one of the actual incident and another warning other women not to go after her baby daddy. In the footage, she looked like she had her child in the car with her. She was on probation for the incident when she allegedly decided to get back behind the wheel and hit another woman in early 2021, 3 years later. Police arrived and found a 20-year-old victim suffering from life-threatening injuries. She was taken to the hospital in critical condition. The woman's aunt, Ebony Gaddis, said that her niece broke her ribs and needed surgery on her liver. She was lucky to be alive. After learning that Ellison had been arrested for a similar incident in the past, Gaddis wondered how and why she was able to do it again. Ellison was accused of running the victim over during an argument, but authorities declined to offer specific details on the case. According to Gaddis, the suspect even took her niece's phone. When the victim tried getting the device back, she fell, and Ellison put the car in reverse, mowing her down. Prosecutors charged Ellison with felony hit and run, robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and even 2 misdemeanor counts of child abuse. The outcome of this case is unclear. Number 4. Hit and run spree. In 2022, 32 total pedestrians were killed in hit-and-run accidents in Philadelphia, over 3 times the number of fatalities from 3 years earlier in 2019, and a 50% increase from 2021. The problem only seems to be getting worse, and sadly, the vast majority of perpetrators seem to get away with their crimes. According to the Philadelphia Inquirer, police have only made arrests in about half of the fatal hit-and-run crashes since the pandemic started. In one particularly disturbing series of events in late 2022, a woman struck a 51-year-old man on a scooter with her blue Mustang outside a casino. She completely shattered his leg. She then struck 3 vehicles near the casino's valet parking lot, including a car with a 48-year-old woman inside who suffered minor injuries. The erratic driver sped off quickly but didn't get far before hitting a 53-year-old man while he was on his bicycle. He was injured but stable when he got to the hospital. The fourth victim, Roland Darrell White, was not as lucky as the others. He died from his injuries. Shortly after hitting him, the suspect ditched her vehicle and escaped on foot. Like many other hit-and-run suspects, she remains at large, and no arrests have been made. Number 3. Vincent Jean. In 2022, after getting into an accident in Elizabeth, New Jersey, 23-year-old Morgan Scott got out of her car, expecting to have a civilized conversation with the other driver involved. When she realized he was trying to leave the scene, she pulled her phone out and started snapping photos of his SUV so she could help police identify him. He apparently didn't like this very much, so he began driving straight toward the young woman, who tried running into someone else's yard to avoid getting hit. The driver rolled up onto the lawn and hit her, then threw his vehicle into reverse, backed up, and barreled forward, striking her for the second time. According to witnesses, he hit Scott 3 times total before fleeing the scene. Scott was rushed to the hospital with serious injuries, including a broken femur, broken ribs, a lacerated liver, a fractured back, and road rash on 60% of her body. She faces a long road to recovery, but is lucky to even be alive. Police later located the suspect, 56-year-old Vincent Jean, sitting in his damaged vehicle nearby. He was charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, assault by auto, leaving the scene of a motor vehicle accident with serious bodily injury, endangering an injured victim, and possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose. According to law enforcement, Jean claimed he didn't see the victim in front of his car and that his vehicle slipped. But this wasn't the first time he was charged with using his car as a weapon. In 2007, Jean was accused of ramming a pickup truck into someone sitting on their motorcycle in a Wayne, New Jersey parking lot. Jean pleaded guilty to aggravated assault causing severe bodily injury in connection with the previous incident. The recent case is ongoing. Number 2. Dean Twain Mitchell. In 2015, police in Pensacola, Florida, got a call about a man creating a disturbance at his ex-girlfriend's house. By the time officers got to the scene, the suspect, Dean Twain Mitchell, had left. He had a warrant out for his arrest in connection to an unrelated incident, so Officer Mark Norman went out looking for him. He found Mitchell sitting in the passenger seat of a car with another man outside a motel nearby. As Officer Norman approached him, Mitchell ordered his friend to drive away. The friend refused, though, so Mitchell shoved him out of the car, got into the driver's seat himself, put the vehicle in reverse, and stepped on the gas. He backed into Norman's cruiser, then changed direction and drove straight toward Norman and another officer, Sarah Barbosa. Both cops fired at the vehicle, which hit a wall and quickly sped out of the parking lot. Officer Barbosa fell while moving out of the way and hit the back of her head, leaving her with some minor injuries. Mitchell eventually ditched the car and attempted to escape on foot, but was soon captured. He's now serving a 12-year sentence for assault on a law enforcement officer, carjacking, resisting arrest without violence, leaving the scene of a traffic accident, fleeing and eluding police, and driving without a license. Number 1. Aria Alexandria Martin. Simon Wong heard some commotion coming from outside his apartment in Mission Viejo, California, so he went over to the window. Looking out, he saw a Nissan Rogue recklessly crashing into parked cars, including his own SUV. He started recording on his phone and went outside with the camera still rolling, only to become the erratic driver's next target. After narrowly avoiding getting hit, Wong later told local news station KTLA that he was worried for his safety and the safety of others, but there was little the bystanders could do besides helplessly watch on as a woman behind the wheel screamed insults at them. Footage from that day showed some vehicle owners trying to shield their cars with their bodies, which only seemed to make them more of a target. Some onlookers tried to confront the driver, causing her to become even more angry. She was later identified as 33-year-old Aria Alexandria Martin, who allegedly crashed into as many as 11 cars during the rampage. She then got on the freeway, causing authorities to shut traffic down to a standstill until she was in custody. According to law enforcement, the disturbing hit-and-run spree was fueled by drug usage. Martin was charged with felony counts of vandalism and assault with a deadly weapon, as well as misdemeanor reckless driving and driving under the influence of drugs. Thankfully, no one was injured, but the damage she caused to vehicles was estimated to be in the range of thousands. Thanks for watching. Would you rather get into a fender bender and have the other driver flee the scene and never get caught, making it your problem to cover the damages to your car, or deal with an angry driver who screams in your face and threatens you, but eventually hands over their insurance information? Let me know in the comments below.